closest car, Tuxedo responds, and we're going to have to do an evaluation. If the person threatens suicide, the person has to go to get evaluated, right? It's out of our hands. They have to go to the hospital. They have to be evaluated by a professional. If a person is depressed, not threatening suicide, didn't try it, didn't take the medication, or try to kill themselves, they could be evaluated in different ways. Orange County can send a mobile mental health unit, which are trained professionals. They come down and they could do on-the-scene evaluations. So they're going to evaluate the person right there in their house. Another way is the person didn't threaten suicide, but maybe a parent or the child is concerned with the loved one, and an evaluation could be done over the phone. Maybe this is an ongoing thing, and we've been there a lot, or the county's aware of the person, and they can do an evaluation over the phone. That's rare, but it does happen, right? Again, an emergency situation where they threaten suicide, they attempt suicide, they have to go get evaluated. There's two ways of transport: the police car and or the ambulance. The ambulance is number one. We want a person to be go in the ambulance and be taken to the hospital to be evaluated. Violent mental health patients may have to be secured in the back of a police car and then transported down, and then the ambulance follows behind, and the person will go to the hospital and get treatment, evaluated. We have two incidents that I would like to share. The officer just went on a call, so I don't know if he's back yet. Sarge, do you know if Officer Shiloh's back on?
He's on his way back at this time.
Okay, so he's on his way back. So I'm going to give you two incidents where the officer took the person in the police car down to the hospital where the ambulance follows. And I'm going to give you an incident where actually Sergeant Russell was on this call, where they called for a mental health evaluation of the person. Mobile mental health came down, evaluated the person, and stated they had to go to the hospital to get better help. So we're going to wait until he gets back. But Sergeant, can you talk about the person from Minnesota that has been living in the car for a while now, for over 6 months, I believe, in town?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we had a woman that was living in her car in and about the town of Tuxedo and the town of Warwick, all along the stretch of Long Meadow Road there. The situation with that is many people may have been aware of her. You may have seen this particular white Buick throughout the town. Many of you may have seen her, but we sometimes hide. We would question her, but if the individual is not a danger to themselves, nor exhibiting these behaviors, can be right, even though you feel particular case due to the winter and her car becoming disabled and her still refusing to allow herself to go to a hotel even though she had the means to do so, we were able to articulate with mobile mental health that she was a danger to herself. That was the crux that allowed us to have her evaluated. And that's what got her finally to a mental health evaluation in a hospital where they were able to finally determine that she did need medication, and they're currently still working with her. That's why you don't see her throughout the town. You have to be able to articulate if you do find there to be a problem. And police responses in those cases, you get the medics to come out. They've come out on occasions and have checked her out. We've actually had the Adult Protective Services come out and find that there was no way to force her to go get the help she needed and or to get on the medications that would right her mind. But in this particular case, due to the weather and due to her inability to allow herself to get to a safe location, mobile mental health was able to articulate the ability to have her taken in. And that's where the police were involved in that particular case.
So as you see, the person didn't threaten suicide, didn't attempt it, didn't try it, but the person wasn't in need of help. Could afford a hotel, could afford food. What do? The car broke down. It's in the middle of the winter. The person's either going to freeze. The police, what are the police going to do? Lock her up? That's what the police do, right? We arrest people. Well, we call mobile mental health. They came down, they do the evaluation, they interact, and they make the decisions. We didn't transport that person, correct, Sarge?
No, with the assistance of mobile mental health, we were able to get an ambulance to come out, and she was transported that way. It took a little bit of getting her into the vehicle, but she went, and I actually followed that ambulance down to the Garnet Hospital, just as an assurance that she got there safely and made sure she was checked in safely. And from there.
Chief, we have a related question in our chat from Allison Taylor. The question reads, what sort of training, preliminary and ongoing, do our police officers receive to support both interacting with these individuals and the after effect that these kinds of difficult situations may have on the officers, like stress?
Yeah, so they receive the basic training in the academy. The ongoing training is updated material from the county health department. It's very little, and Sarge, you could probably add on to this. We don't have much training on it other than the updated information and the memos sent out by the county. But it goes to. Go ahead, Sarge.
That's correct. Any additional training would be elective, something that would be offered through different police academies or other schools altogether dealing with mental health. But the majority of that training you get from the academy level, and it's elective after you're out of the academy. It's something that's offered more so, especially through the county, and I believe they're going to have additional trainings for that moving forward. A lot of departments are now trying to go to a different means of other agencies responding to mental health, but you're going to find in Orange County that most departments are not that large. Most municipalities can't necessarily afford to have another medical, mobile mental health 24 hours in their jurisdiction. So it's going to have to come from the state or the county level to get to that point where you have others respond to calls that are not violent but involve mobile mental health.
Right.
So we have another question, if I could pose it, is
Sure.
So if a call comes in, it doesn't explicitly state or refer to a mental health issue, what questions are asked to determine the same? If a person's not currently taking the meds that may be needed, how much does this play a role in the evaluation process? So it's not overtly been stated as a mental health issue, but the conditions of the person's kind of indicating something's up.
Sure. Well, the county's pretty good. The county gets a lot of information. The county 911, when you call them, call for help, they get a lot of information, and they give a lot of information over the radio. Officers are investigative. They're going to ask a lot of questions when they get to the scene. They use whatever resources they can. They look around the scene to see if there's any medication laying around or alcohol abuse. They'll ask the people in the house, or around, what's going on. Are they on medication? Um, did they take medication? What's causing this incident that the police are now responding to? So that's the job of the officer, is to ask a lot of questions and observe the scene and to see what's going on. And then they're going to make that decision. Mobile mental health, are they going to call the ambulance right away and have them come up and transport that person to the hospital? So it's the officer of the job to investigate, ask a lot of questions, find out what's going on.
In many cases, Mr. English, in many cases like this, being that we are a municipality, we are familiar with all the people for the most part, where we get the same calls. We become familiar with individuals. So in time, the officers learn how to deal with specific people in the community that may have some mental health issues. And when we get to those locations, we can evaluate it from there. We'll make that determination as to whether or not we need mobile mental health, because the situation may not be so dire, that we need to have the individual taken by an ambulance away. So sometimes mobile mental health, we would have time enough to have them come out and do an evaluation to determine if there needs to be something further going on, or if the individual is just simply not taking medications, if that may be the case. But for the most part, as the chief said, when we get to these locations, you start gathering as much information as you can so you can form a plan as to how to go forward from there.
I mean, some of these reports clearly, you come up on a scene where there are weapons involved. Councilperson Maria May asked, do you have public protocols that for you to follow to de-escalate violence in an event for the use of violence or the threatening of violence, especially with a weapon?
Well, that falls under the use of force protocol. So if somebody's, are they, using the weapon against themselves, others, or the police officer, if they're threatening suicide with a weapon, you got to keep your distance. You got to follow your protocol, use of force, and de-escalate the best possible.
Do you guys ever use like a stun gun or anything like that? Is that any part of your tools?
Well, that's part of the use of force policy. Have we used it? I can't remember the last time we used the taser for a mental health situation. Sarge, do you ever recall?
This agency has never utilized our tasers for any mental health calls that we've gone on.
Thank you. Monitoring the chat here. Did Sergeant Officer Shiloh come back? I'm not sure.
There's a question here. I'm sorry, from Haley. Example: a person could take their meds and still not need further evaluation. So as the sergeant was saying, they respond to this one place. I'm not going to mention it. Quite a few times, and in one of my reports, monthly reports actually, the officers, they waited. The person took their medicine, became calm and controlled, and there was no need for police assistance. So yeah, they can go to the scene. In this incident, they knew the person, so they felt comfortable allowing the person to take their medication, go back to being calm and leaving the scene, and nothing further.
So I see a question from Gary Lee Hefner. In your opinions, both the chief and the sergeant, based on the mental health calls you go out on and the mental health type of help that is available to you from the county, state, et cetera, what gaps exist that you need help with filling?
Sarge, I'll leave that one for you. Is there anything like the county could do better? I know they're getting better. Their response time has been getting better too, within the hour, right?
Yes, actually, based on what we've experienced here within the town of Tuxedo, whether it's a resident or someone passing through due to the various roads, we have had relatively very good luck, very good fortune when it comes to dealing with the county and dealing with any type of mobile mental health situations. I can think of quite a few of them throughout the 21 years that we've had, and we seem to be able to resolve them pretty well. And where the county would be involved, even prior to reforms, we followed protocol, which would involve the general measures of wondering whether or not the individual is are they a threat to themselves? What was the initial call? We have to consider all of that. Why was the police department called for this individual? And if it was directly related to a mental health situation, what was the nature as to why you called us? If they were threatening people, if they're threatening themselves, we would then go and we handle it from there. And if the county need to be involved, we get them involved from that point forward. But for the most part, we've handled pretty much everything on our own, unless it involves mobile mental health or some other form of agency to get involved to evaluate the individual.
I would imagine, also our other first responders, the local ambulance corps and obviously the fire corps must be a useful ally in many of these calls as well, I would imagine.
Well, we're fortunate to have a 24-hour medic, and these medics are a bit more well equipped to handle a lot of the mental health situations. So many times when they get to the scene, they can also be utilized as a means to determine whether or not we should have this individual taken in. They have their protocols as well. So when they get to the scene, they generally the incident commander, the medic, especially if it's involving something medical, which mental health falls under that line. And if there's no violence occurring at the time, no one threatening violence, but behaving in a manner in which is harmful to themselves or others, that medic can also make that determination, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I see Officer Shiloh has joined us. Welcome back, Officer.
I'm back.
Sure. So Officer Shiloh went on a call. So I wanted to give you different calls that the officers went on. Sergeant Russell told you about the person who did not threaten suicide, did not threaten to harm herself or others, but an evaluation had to be done, and the professionals came in and determined, yes, this person does need a mental health evaluation and does need help. Officer Shiloh is going to tell you about an incident he responded to in the Tuxedo Park in the village. I know the Chief Conklin, who's on the phone here, he's well versed on this incident. He actually wrote a letter of commendation on how Officer Shiloh handled this. So, Officer Shiloh, I wanted you to just go through the steps and everything, how you responded to the initial call, what was the information you received, and just go through the call.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. What happened was my partner, Officer Hall, and I, we were just on routine patrol, and one of the officers from the village of Tuxedo Park, he called requesting help. We respond into the village to the address. As soon as we get, what was funny was I get there first, and the officer, he's still wet behind the ears. I have socks older than him. And he gets out of the car, he says, "Hey, clear transparency. I've been on the job for 6-7 months. I don't know what I'm doing. Please help." So I found that kind of funny. So when he said that, the gentleman in question was somewhere around the house. As we all know, the houses in Tuxedo Park, they're very, very big. While I'm talking with the officer, he's giving me the breakdown of what's going on. The homeowner called and said that her son just showed up at the house. He wasn't welcome there. So now I'm already knowing that we have a trespass issue and we may have to remove the person. As I'm talking with the officer and the homeowner, he shows up out of nowhere. He just comes around the house And I can tell right away he wasn't fully there. I couldn't diagnose what he was doing, but I knew something wasn't right. So my first thing was I looked at his hands physically, like, all right, he's not holding any weapons or anything like that. And I just began talking with him. I listened to everything he had to say. I just let him basically spew it all out. That way he can maybe tire himself out. I can get some info, try and kind of talk with him a little bit. And that's exactly what we all did. The village officer, he just watched and learned. My partner, Officer Hall, and I, we just kept doing that, just talking with him. We realized he was definitely mentally unstable, whether he was on some type of drug, narcotic, or he was just legitimately mentally unstable. We did call for the medic. The medic did get there, and the three of us kept talking to him. We kept talking to him because he was calm. We kept our distance. He wasn't showing any physical behavior that would put us in jeopardy. And we saw his hands. He didn't have any weapons on him. He kept pulling up his pants. He was wearing very, very baggy clothing. So that let me know he didn't have any weapons on him, because he kept pulling his pants up. They kept falling down, et cetera, et cetera. So while we're talking with the medic says, yep, he definitely needs to go, because he was just showing the different signs of behavior that he needed to go get an evaluation. The tricky part came when trying to get him into the ambulance. We walked him to the ambulance. His mom was there. He was also on the phone with his father, and he was listening to his father via the telephone, and his father convinced him to go as well. So I'm like, all right, this is great. We don't have to wrestle with this guy, and we can get him into the ambulance safely. So we're walking to the ambulance. We get him inside, and now he's getting situated. The young officer, he called his chief and asked to go, but then there was an issue with who was going to be the officer in the park. Then I decided, okay, I spoke to Chief Conklin. I said, hey, Chief, what if I go down with the subject and your officer can stay, and then I'll get a ride back? Or he can go down with him, and then I'll go down and drive the officer back. He was fine with that. So now we had a plan. So you had the paramedic, the EMT who was driving the ambulance, and the subject in the back of the ambulance. And this is what happened. So the ambulance drives off. We didn't even get out the driveway, and the guy jumps out of the ambulance. Just jumps out and starts running down the street. We didn't handcuff him because he wasn't showing any physical danger towards us, and we felt if we did handcuff him, it would kind of change the tone, because we did establish a good rapport with him. So that's why we didn't handcuff him to the gurney or anything inside the ambulance. Once he ran out, we did catch back up to him. He ran down the street. I got in my patrol car. I went to the next intersection. There he was. He came right back to me. He's like, hey, man, can I get a ride to the police station? I'm like, sure, no problem. Hop in the back. And he hopped right in the back of my police car where the cage is. Boom. That was it. Now, before that, before he got into the ambulance, he stripped down butt naked. It was already cold out, took all his clothes off. He was hot. He was sweating, started running around naked. Now, here we go. I'm like, oh, my God, now I got to chase down a naked guy and tackle him and such. But using our words and our training, we were able to get him to get his clothes back on and then into the ambulance. So now I have him in my car, and I just drive him straight to Nyack Hospital. There was no reason for him to get out of my car, go into the ambulance, and go through that again. We didn't need him jumping out on the highway or anything like that. So the ambulance and myself, we drive him to Nyack Hospital. Nyack Hospital has the staff. They all met us outside. We got him out of the car safely and walked him to their special room for this, to their mental health room. And they admitted him, and he was there, I think, for maybe that day and the next day. And I think the village of Tuxedo Park, they had some charges on him, maybe trespassing and something else. And they took it over from there. But the point of it was, he could have become very violent and we could have all went hands-on with him and we didn't have to. Myself, Officer Hall, and the medic, we all used our words and conversated with him and kind of treated him like, and we'd established a good rapport with him. It could have went much worse if we had to tackle him or wrestle with him. One of us would have gotten hurt. And then that goes into a different topic. But the point of it was that we did communicate with him like a human being and establish a rapport, and no one got hurt and he got the help he needed. And then I think 2 days later, he came back here to the police station to get fingerprinted because we have the machine for that. And I had the nicest conversation with him. He actually thanked me he remembered. He's like, hey man, I thank you for talking with me. I wasn't myself. And we had a nice conversation about that incident. Where he is now, I don't know, but we're all alive and well.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Officer Shiloh, and thank you, Sergeant Russell. I think, these recounts and the depth of incidents in these reports clearly underscores, police work crosses a lot of different boundaries, and sounds like you have pretty good support from Orange County. And what I heard talked about for de-escalation strategies, obviously patience. You guys seem to utilize that, giving conversation and time to let the not rushing the situation. That seems to be described as a very useful strategy. And the respect that you show obviously pays back dividends. So any other de-escalation strategies you would come to mind?
You mean methods in which to de-escalate?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll find that in police work, 80% of what we do is communication. It's interpersonal communication skills, 80% of it. The other 20%, 10% of it is writing a bunch of stuff, and the other 10% may be hands-on. So as the years go by, you do get better with communicating with pretty much anyone, because you're going to come into contact with all different walks of life, different people in different means of life. The fortunate aspect of working in a community and being an officer from one community, you get to know the people of your community. You get to know our 911 operators. They know us. A lot of them know us by first name basis, even though we may have never even met them. They know how we patrol, how we react, and they know the information to provide to us. We will ask most information, if it's not provided to us beforehand, before we even get to the call. Many occasions we'll say we're familiar. So we know what to do once we get there. Doesn't mean that every call involving a mobile mental health situation to someone that we know is going to end the same way. Sometimes it may be it may be a violent situation where they're violent towards themselves when we get there. So we have to de-escalate it. We'll go in and we'll be calm. We'll try to relate. We're not going to demean them, but we're going to try to relate. If we need to put some firmness into our voices, sometimes we do that. And we'll know when we can, because these are calls that we may have gone on before, people that we may have dealt with before. I can think of one recently. It's what we call a frequent flyer. We go to this place, and usually when I get there and I say what I need to say and I put some firmness into it, suddenly the individual straightens right up, and we go forward from there. But not all of them are the same. Every one of them it requires a different level of communication, a different level of tone from the officer. But at all means, regardless if it's a mobile mental health or not, we try to de-escalate the situation before it gets to a point where you have to go hands-on on an individual. And fortunately for us, we've been getting through a lot of them pretty well.
A couple of related questions is about domestic violence, as a challenging call. I saw that not quite as frequently, but certainly a semi-common topic. And then there was a question about the training. You were just talking about your communication skills and how important that is, basically the bulk of what you need to do. And there's a question about training in the academy, and then the afterwards sounds like a lot of the afterwards is experience and just personal growth. So can you just talk a minute about the training the academy gives you related to that?
Yeah, each academy is going to have, for the most part, they all have the same concept of going forward when it comes to interpersonal communication skills. They do point that out. Both Shiloh and myself are instructors. Shiloh does a lot of instructing in police academies, and not only do we incorporate this in our own work, but in like Shiloh's case, he literally teaches this stuff at the academy. Same with our chief. We're fortunate to have really good instructors that go to the different academies that actually teach it, so that in turn makes our department pretty well hands-on when it comes to this and how to actually go forward with it. There are additional trainings, as I said, besides the police academy that we get. And in my case, it was 20-something years ago. You know, now there are different things that have occurred, different methods and means of approaching these situations when it comes to mental health. So as I mentioned before, there are elective schoolings we can go to. Myself, I've gone to cultural awareness schooling. You know, it's a 2-day school for that. There's numerous different schools that will add to the plethora of information that you gather. You know, you go out on your patrol with that much more information on how to deal with different situations. And in this particular case, we're concentrating on mobile mental health. So there is additional schooling out there. And nowadays that we're working on many different reforms, there are more schools that are available.
I imagine also, you know, you talked about cultural awareness, you know, the language barriers that you must encounter. You know, I'm a language teaching professional in New York Public Library, and encounter people from hundreds of different languages. And I understand that challenge. And do you use any type of Google Translate or any type of technology, or does the county offer any kind of translation services that you can call up and utilize something like that? So, you know, how often is that an issue, and how do you deal with that? Over.
There is an issue. The town of Tuxedo, we've got like 53,000 people that travel through the roads here within a 24-hour period. You're going to come into many different types of people with different languages. We utilize the resources that we've developed. The county does provide many different language interpreters. And in some cases, we will know people, or we'll know other officers in other agencies, and we'll reach out to them sometimes if we need something translated. We've had several situations actually involving a mobile mental health situation where an individual escaped from Good Samaritan Hospital and walked all the way to Tuxedo, still had his IV in his arm, and walked through here. And he was Haitian. He spoke Haitian. So I communicated to someone that I've known from childhood that spoke Creole, and we were able to communicate with him to get him the help he needed. So we're going to utilize what we can, but the county does in fact have multiple ways for us to communicate to different languages. Like the cultural awareness school I went to, at one point in time, we had a large Asian, I think it was a Chinese people had come up for NYU on Ironwood Drive. The whole community was Chinese, and many of them didn't speak English. That school was offered to our agency during that time, and I did to help understand that culture, because many of them were coming directly from China, and their interactions with police are totally different there than they would be here. And it was very, very helpful. I developed really great relationships with many people there to understand the dynamic there. And the same thing, we figured out ways of getting means to communicate with them if they didn't speak English.
Ken, you need to unmute yourself.
Ken, you're on mute.
There you go.
Take advantage of that. I was just saying, I was monitoring the time. I think we got to most of our chat questions and comments. Some more comments directed at the group. I could read a couple of those. One of the comments said, based on your answers, you know, how many of the calls are familiar persons versus newer persons, as newer persons present those new unknowns? I think that's one of the strengths of, you know, Tuxedo being a smaller community. You know, as you guys said, you know a lot of the people you come into contact with, especially people that might have issues that are repetitive. And I guess you develop those skills and patterns for dealing with that.
Hey, Ken, can I touch on that very quickly?
Of course, officer.
Sergeant Russell will know this. I forget how long ago, but anyway, we all know the watchtowers on Long Meadow Road. Thousands of people go there all the time from all over the country and all over the world. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we've noticed it. Like you'll see license plates from all over the country driving through Tuxedo, like Nebraska, California, Alaska. Like, wow, it's not just the tri-state area. Anyway, my point of this is, yes, Sergeant Russell touched on, yeah, we're familiar, but this story, this guy was brand new. He made his way, I believe, from Ohio all the way to the Watchtower on Long Meadow Road. They knew him. When I say they, the Watchtower knew of him, and they didn't let him in. Then what happens is Warwick PD got a call. They dropped him off right in town across from the train station at the deli. And then he was acting weird inside the deli. And then the deli owner called us. I had no idea that any of this was going. So I show up. It's a young male, dressed very nice, very articulate. So I start talking to him. He says he took the bus there from Ohio. The guy had no luggage, nothing. I live this close to work and I carry a bag with a change of clothes, something, you know. No luggage, just the clothes he was wearing. I found that as a red flag immediately. Like, you don't have to go to the bathroom, take a shower, like nothing. You have no change of clothes, no pajamas, nothing, no bag. As I start talking to him, his story doesn't make sense. I'll cut the story short. I gave him a ride somewhere where he could get a hotel. He had no money. I gave him, I think, $10 or $15 out of my own pocket. And I gave him a ride somewhere where he can get a hotel, he can get a phone charger, and call somebody for help. Because at that point, he was stranded. The very next, I won't say where I dropped him off. It's in my report. But anyway, the next day, he's right back in Tuxedo. I think he used my money to get on the train and come right back to Tuxedo. Because I saw him, I'm like, oh my God, he's back. Anyway, that's when Sergeant Russell was working. Then the two of us, we teamed up and we got him an evaluation. And Sergeant Russell, if you can piggyback, I think he go to a shelter that night? Or he did go to the hospital? You know who I'm talking about.
In that particular case, you know, sometimes you'll find, because the Jehovah's Witness headquarters is something that's on social media, there's a website, you get people from all around the world that suddenly, if they don't have everything right mentally, they get fixated in that location. And we get numerous individuals that will come in and out of Tuxedo and or Warwick that have this fixation with the location, but yet they're not allowed there. This was one of those particular cases. He came back because he felt he was supposed to be at that location. We communicated to them and they stated very clearly that he was not welcome there. However, they would pay for or do whatever was necessary to help get him back home to Ohio, where he belonged. As we discovered things, you know, just communicating with him, getting onto a level, because he's very articulate. I mean, he spoke as if he was highly educated, but yet something was wrong. We communicated with him, kept him at ease well enough to get him someplace to get him something to eat. And while he was eating, we then had mobile mental health come out. We then brought him to the station. They interviewed him. They can see right away that there's something wasn't quite right. And we were able to get him taken to Garnet, which has a better mental health evaluation location at that location. It's a pretty good location. To keep him at ease, again, speaking about interpersonal communication and having the resources to do so, he was comfortable in getting in the ambulance and traveling as long as he knew I was going to make sure he got to the hospital safely. Because part of the paranoia, you know, equates to other people that you're not familiar with, possibly strapping you down or doing something to that nature. So I developed a pretty good rapport with him. I put my lights on. I stayed behind the ambulance. I can see him popping his head up, looking out every so often. If that was going to keep him calm to get him to the hospital, then that's the level in which I was willing to go. Got him to the hospital. He got out. He was anxious to see me. We walked in, shook hands. He remained calm, and he got the help he needed to get himself calm enough so that his family could come and get him back to Ohio. So that's the particular case that Officer Shiloh is referring to. And again, these are people that are not from this area. And as we have the Jehovah's Witness headquarters, get many people here are not from the area, and we'll have those particular incidents with people that are outside of the Tuxedo group itself.
Well, thanks to you both, Chief. I don't know. I think thanks for culling through your reports and pulling the officers together. And you know, not only are we learning about how you handle these type of cases, but getting to meet directly and talk with our officers and yourself, Chief. So I think this is important concept of what we're trying to do here tonight. Thank you guys for your service and for speaking with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, Chief, I'm watching our clock, and a related issue that I heard a few people talk about when we were starting was this whole notion of, well, a big part of this initiative, it's called the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. And I was speaking with Sue and Michelle earlier today. And, you know, when you think about reform and reinvention, you know, to me, it's very important to find out, well, where are we currently at? What are our current policies? And Chief, you were telling me about changes that have happened in the last year as resulting from the bail reform and changes to arrest and arraignment policies. I know we have some attorneys in our group here tonight and other people from law enforcement. So if you can give us a little overview, and then we can open up the conversation to questions and also tap into the expertise that we have right here in our community. If you could get us started with that, Chief, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So, you know, we have this New York State Police Reform, Reinvention, Collaboration. And I heard Maria talking about how, you know, April 1st, 2021 is the deadline. But this has started way before. This has started in 2019 with the bail reform. And I know, who was it, Hank, that was asking for the arrest data? You're going to see a big change from 2019 to 2020 on the arrest data. Now, we don't have, we're not New York City, we don't have 100, you know, thousands of arrests or anything like that. So it's not going to shock you when our numbers are so low. But the bail reform, which was signed April 1st, 2019, majority of arrests is no bail. It means there's no pretrial detention and the bail is eliminated, which means you have to release the person, right? You arrest the person, you bring them in, process them, and then release. Where back in the day, prior to 2019, you would arrest the person, process them, bring them in front of the judge, the local judge, right here in the town of Tuxedo, and they could make a decision to post bail, you $500 bail, or just commit the person to the Orange County Jail or release the person without bail. Majority of the time, if we're bringing a person in front of a judge, it's for a good reason. We want bail for some reason. We don't think this person's coming back to court, or the charges are serious enough that we brought the person before the judge for an arraignment. Well, no more. It's very rare that we're going to have an arraignment right after the arrest. In fact, we could arrest a person, process the person, charge the person, arraign the person, put the person in jail with just one officer. Now, when we make an arrest, we bring the person back. We have to call the district attorney's office. They write up the information. They write up the charges that fit what the crime is, what we tell them, and the supporting documents. And if there's an arraignment, it's going to be a general arraignment with the county. It's not our local judges anymore. Everything changed in 2019 to 2020. So I think our arrests in 2019 was like 75 arrests. Well, 2020, it's like 18 arrests. You know, things just changed. District attorney's not charging. We have a lot of vehicle and traffic arrests, right? We stop a lot of cars on 17 going through the hamlet. If you have a suspended license, that would have been an arrest prior to 2019. We would have arrested you, impounded your card, you take an arrest number, and you charge the person. The county said no more. We don't want that arrest. It's too much work. Just give them a ticket and let them go. So when the supervisor English says, I see a lot of zeros, you're not making an arrest. What happened? Your numbers are low. I'm like, yes, they are. And everything has changed. The way we used to do policing to how we do it now, everything has changed. District attorney's more in control of who we charge, who we arraign if we arraign them in front of the judge. It's just, unless it's a violent felony or a domestic violence incident, an arraignment here at a local court is going to be very rare. So I just want to let you know, this police reform has been going on well before today in this committee and what we're doing. It's just, it really has changed. And there's an attorney, I believe, 2 attorneys, right, on this call, and they can elaborate maybe how the court systems are different now. Because I know, what was it? I think we had a stolen car that came through town, ended up in Jersey. They arrested the person and they had to release the person. The person just is released. They process them and they're out with, you know, what's the paperwork, 2-3 hours worth of paperwork and the person's out already.
So I see Chief Calvin Demond asked, doesn't the judge have discretion in some cases? And it sounds like quite a bit.
Chief, I can help you out on this if you want.
Okay, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm the one who's currently the chief of narcotics in the Bronx as a district attorney. I've been a prosecutor for approximately 25 years, and it's a whole new world. The chief did a very good summary of the new bail reform laws. They were enacted about 13 months ago, but we knew they were coming about 2 years ago. The bottom line is that unless it's try this everyday victims, because I get the question every day, how can that person be out? And it's no longer a matter of judge's discretion. It's no longer a matter, is the person a danger to himself or the community? The balance has shifted around. Most crimes there isn't bail for. There's a very few things, typically most violent crime, or if you get arrested while other charges are pending. But unless it's rape or murder, or you already have other charges pending, the judge cannot, the system and the DA cannot set bail on an individual. So for 200 years in America, we had bail. You can argue whether it's good or bad or what people should have gotten bail. But the system now is not flexible in that there's no discretion for literally 98% of people that are arrested. And I'd also say, Chief, I wanted to throw in there that along with that bail reform law, that the discovery laws also changed. So the burden on police departments, even though there's fewer arrests, thank God there's fewer arrests, because so much more work has to happen immediately on every arrest that does happen.
Correct. They have to be supplied with the information within 20 days, I believe. All
Yeah,
video,
which means you really have which really means immediately for you guys.
correct, because we got to give it to the district attorney's office. They have to review it and they have to give it to the defense attorney. So like we just got cameras in the police station, right? So any of the cameras where a person arrested comes in view, I have to turn all those videos over to the district attorney's office. So every arrest takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, and a lot of time for the sergeant to do. Right, Sarge?
Yeah.
Well, I see a comment here from Gunnell that she acknowledges it is very different. She sees it in New Jersey where she works. It's a real adjustment for the officers and the criminal justice. Gunnell, I don't know if you want to turn your microphone and expand on that.
Sure. Just I'm in the forensic aspect, so I'm in a little bit of the other side where I'm analyzing the cases, bail reform cases. New Jersey was one of the first states that actually did change up bail reform a little bit earlier than New York did, and I did see a lot of more phone calls, and everything did need to be analyzed a lot sooner. The discovery requests were a lot more intricate. But we were able to get a lead on it, especially with legalization of marijuana now. So we're not doing those cases now, but that helped a lot. And honestly, from what I gather, it does seem that the community is a little bit at a better. I just finished training for the American Academy of Forensic Sciences this whole week, and they talked a lot about bail reform, and there were a lot of biases and a lot of cognitive and contextual biases that did come in play in the courtroom when the judges are again with the defendants and whatnot, and it did seem that it was a lot better. That's how I gather it. And so everybody just has to adjust. But I'm hoping, the Tuxedo Police Department can, adjust the way that they can. Unfortunately, Chief, you did say the decrease in arresting, but if that does have to be the way it is, maybe it is for the best. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'm not saying it was good or bad. And also, you brought up the marijuana too. Yes, our district attorney doesn't prosecute marijuana because you have to send it out to be tested, right? So they're not going to take all that time and money to have personal use amount of marijuana be tested and then try to prosecute that person. New York State, it's a $50 fine for personal use amount for a first-time offender. And now they don't even want you arrested, and soon it's going to be legal, like you said.
I think Calvin was trying to make a point.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and kind of give a little background on what I see as how we got to this bail reform situation. And I'm sure some of those of you who are in the police department and in the legal profession understand what happened. I'm a journalist. I'm more of a behind the scenes of a journalist, but I've done numerous stories of people, mostly in bigger cities, that get caught up. And I'm sure you've all heard of these stories where they get arrested. Maybe it's falsely, maybe it isn't, but they get in jail and they basically end up under the jail because they can't post bail. And this notion of bail is very old, and it needed to be fixed. I'm not sure that the way they fixed it is proper. It needs some tweaking, I think, and I think those are the people here that are in law enforcement can agree with that. But there were some tragedies at Rikers Island where teenagers were under the jail. They couldn't get out for something they didn't even do, according to the evidence that I saw. So it's unfortunate that we're in this pendulum situation where it's one way here, it's bad, and instead of making tweaks, we've swung it all the way to the other side. It's unfortunate, and I can hear the frustration in your voice, Chief, and I feel for you. That's what I wanted to say.
May I ask you a question, Chief? How many of those people that get, let's say that they get a summons and have to come back instead of being put in jail, do you have a percentage of how many of them actually do show up and pay up, or don't show up and then it escalates to something else? Do we have any kind of percentage of, I mean, if there's no bail, are they still showing up to, to respond to the summonses that they get?
Right, I don't think we have, I don't have that numbers, the court will, but during the bail reform, it also changed warrants, bench warrants and arrest warrants, to the point where the district attorney went to every municipality, every police department, and reviewed the arrest warrants and bench warrants. We went from over 100 warrants, we have 7 right now. So they dismissed over 100 cases. If a person doesn't show, that doesn't constitute a bench warrant, where in the past it would. They get a letter that they didn't show. Please come back the next time. They get a lot of chances before a warrant is issued for them. I don't know what the percentage is. Again, our numbers dropped big time. I don't think we're a good example to get a good feeling of, are people coming back to court or not. We would have to go to the court and get a general, because state police makes a lot of arrests on the thruway that come to our court. So to get a good evaluation, we would have to go to the court and get those numbers.
The obvious consequence of not showing up for what was a minor thing that you were released on your own recognizance or on a ticket, a summons. Now you don't show up. Now it's escalated, and next time you get stopped, like Calvin was saying, it's growing and growing. But Calvin, I do know it's exactly what you're talking about. I actually run a literacy program out at Rikers Island, and it's startling. When I walk in there, first of all, just to get into the place is incredible. And, some of the young kids I see in there, for some very minor offenses, just can't get out because they can't make bail. And yeah, it is sad that it's a monetary thing that keeps you in jail, but I could have done the same exact crime, and had I been able to post the bail, I got to go home. So, I think it definitely needs reform, and as you were saying, but it's not as simple as how much money you have in your pocket, as to whether you should go home or not. And because look, we see a lot of people that are really bad people just because they have money, they get to go home. That's not right either. That's for sure. So that's my 2 cents on that. Well, Chief, I appreciate, I think you got into some of the most recent changes that have been addressing some of this reform and reinvention notion. And, of course, the scale in Tuxedo is obviously different than in New York City, what we have to deal with. And, but it's, challenges are real as well, as we heard from the officers, and as we know, Tuxedo isn't just about the people who live here; it's the tens of thousands who pass through every day. And how do we have policies in place to make sure our officers are properly trained, and that community policing is what part of this is to learn what do we do. And I think you guys are doing a good job of helping us understand what our policies are, and I think that's where we're going to try to go next. So Sue Scher and Michelle and Hallie have been working together to try to put together ideas about how do we engage the people who are in this group tonight who came out. How do we make this the citizens' voice to help think about. I'm not crazy about the reform and reinvention, unless it's about us doing it together and finding out what we already do. So how do we start those dialogues? So I know Sue and Michelle were working on a document to try to present some ideas about how these groups might be formed. Michelle, I don't know if you have your document available. I know you worked with Sue to kind of condense some of these ideas.
Well, Sue had put out, and I believe Sue worked with Hallie, a lot of different topics to have the residents come together and discuss. And I tried to look at them all and put them into three categories, broad categories. The first one.
Can maybe I explain what I started doing?
Sure, go ahead.
What we were doing? Is after I read the New York State document, I tried to think about what some of the issues might be in Tuxedo and how we would go about answering them. Subsequently, I attended the community meetings, both for the town of Saugerties and for the Orange County sheriffs. And then hearing at our first meeting, people who were present raised some very interesting concerns and issues that they wanted to hear more about. So what I did is I kind of tried to put things together, and I initially came up with a series of 8 questions that I think Ken sent out a couple of days ago as an attachment, but I don't know if people saw that. But they were ways of putting things together, related things together that might need more information, such as we're getting now, or where we think we might have more recommendations. And so I have not seen how Michelle took my 8 and combined it into 3, but I can tell you one of the things as we talk about whichever categories we have is what we would like to do tonight for the people here, and hopefully for people who came in the past meeting or that we know are interested, is take these topics and form some subgroups or focus groups, as Ken likes to call them, about them. And what I'm willing to do after we look at the different groups is to ask people tonight to kind of sign up for a particular group. We can do that. I will put my telephone and email in a chat. And if after you hear a description of some of the different possible groups, things that you would like to work on, then if you send this to me in a chat as to what one you want to work on and what how to reach you via email, then I will pull together groups of people. So Bill, is Bill Lemansky still here?
I think so. Let's see.
Okay. Well, Bill, you brought up.
Yeah.
You brought up a particular some interests as you were asking, and so for example, number 3 and number 4 are 2 areas that look at the police department, the staffing, the equipment, the budget, the amount of stops and arrests. You might be a good person for that committee, you and a couple of other people, because that's an interest of yours. So if we look at interests that people have, then if you send that to me in an email, I'll put you together with the other people who are interested in that. Ken has also said that he would help and make sure that the committees have a way of using technology to talk to each other. So if we have people who don't have access to a Zoom or a WebEx account, we would try to find ways so that people can talk to each other virtually. So,
and excuse me, Sue, to that point, that would be a helpful way as you're thinking about how can you contribute to this effort. If you have experience facilitating a WebEx, a Google Meet, a Zoom kind of meeting like this, you could be of a real help to a group, because having a moderator, somebody that helps put the group together, is a big asset. Over.
Well, if we could all meet on, say we could find a day where we could all meet, I could use this WebEx, and then and then can assign people to breakout
To
rooms.
breakout rooms, yeah, that might be hard. So I see, what is that I see here? It kind of looks like the list that I created, not the
Yeah,
list that you
That is
created.
your list.
Yeah,
I just put it up.
So
That's
what
your
I
list.
did, I hope I can help get this to 3. Everything you were just talking about, Sue, with the technologies, equipment, arrests, all of that, I could see that as one group that would look at, how our police department runs and the resources they have, all of that you were talking about, the training.
So
And
is that like
I
putting 3 and 4 together?
3, 4, 5,
Okay.
just because this is just, if you want to do it some other way, that'd be great. But I was just hoping to get it to 3.
Can we
then,
read the bold titles first, and then just to quickly go through what these 8 are?
Okay, so starting with number 1, which I thought was really the purpose of the whole thing, was responding to injustice issues, inequities, race, immigration, disabilities, marginalized communities. So it would mean reviewing the policies of the department specifically related to those, reviewing the data, the breakdown of data that might look like bias incidents, reviewing past lawsuits that there may be against the department, looking at current practices, staff hiring and retention issues, all related to race, immigration, disability, I guess, and the other, and training related to that. So that would be one area that's just really looking at issue of bias amongst a number of different populations. And I think that's a really important group to sustain as a separate group, to really look at those issues and to find out, to do research on what's best practices in other places and come up with creative ideas. The second relates to the community responses related to interaction with the police and the community. And one of the things very clearly spelled out in the state document was that each town needed to find some way to hear from residents or the people who pass through, the people who are the consumers of the police department, so to speak, to hear what they have to say about their interactions with the police department. And people in different towns in the state have been doing it in different ways. Some have been holding hearings, virtual hearings, some face-to-face, some virtual hearings, ask people to come forth and talk about their relationship to the police department. Other places have created surveys that go out to people in the community, and if you can figure out a way to get to the people who come through your town, of having them do surveys. I know Maria was in Saugerties one day and she saw in a window a little poster that had a code number that you just took your phone to the code number and it got you to the survey for that town. So there's numbers of ways of doing it. I think just reading about Tuxedo Park seems to have done a hearing and a survey. I spent some time looking at surveys for the Orange County and Saugerties and have kind of put together a potential survey as a beginning for a group to start working on a survey that can go out to all residents. We can also talk about if we want to do a hearing, but I guess in addition to this is thinking of other ways in which the police and the community interact. And so those are two that I think need to stay as separate kinds of things because they need a very different kind of looking. I don't know what other things you kind of put together. Number 6 that I had was mental health. And I think we have a number of mental health people who are either on the call tonight or the past call or in town who might want to come together and just take the information that you gave us tonight, Chief Abbott, and look at it from best practices and other issues and maybe come up with some recommendations. Number 7 was interaction with youth in schools. We've not talked about that. Our youth are in 2 different police districts for schools because we're in 2 different school systems. But we haven't talked about the interaction. I personally don't really know whether we have a school youth officer or what your cases are about youth in school, but I think that's a very important issue. And then the last one was thinking about the variety of forms of, that's number 8, the variety of forms of community engagement and outreach that you've been talking about taking people to the meeting. There are a variety of different options that people can use when in thinking about how the community and the police interact. Either police being involved in town activities or there being a police community board. So we need people to sit and look at the options and then talk with the police department as to pros and cons of these options. So that's how I kind of put things together. I don't know what else you kind of combined, Michelle.
Well, I was looking at the mental health issues since that seems to be so much of what our police force is currently dealing with, and more things that as things change, that we may want to have more training. So I kind of had that as one. And then the other one was community outreach, like you were talking about. You can combine all the community outreach and the youth and the schools all in one. And then the third one would be pretty much everything else, policing, our training, our policies, our resources. And my thought of having 3 committees is that you would probably be able to have, at least 5 or 6 people on a committee as opposed to 8 committees that would have less. So I just thought the more people you could have on a committee, the more brainstorming you could have. But either way, I mean, that's just the way I was thinking of being able to combine things and maybe have larger groups in each committee.
So I've been speaking with both you ladies about this, trying to organize. And so a lot depends on how many people raise their hand and want to be a part of this. And, those are going to be the numbers. So obviously, if you have 5 people raise their hand, you're not going to have 5 groups. So a lot of that dynamic, I think you both have quality arrangements, and I think it's great to drum up interest so people can start thinking about it, because like I've been saying, the only way this thing has any legs is if people want to continue to do it. Like the chief said, starting out, he's here as a resource, not as really a participant, so to speak. And I'm kind of in that boat as well. I'm here trying to facilitate dialogue amongst residents, not to own this process. I saw my role here as just really trying to get the boat away from the dock, so to speak. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you, Michelle, and Sue, and we could share these groupings in both forms, and just so people can kind of get back to Sue, I think, in an email, and kind of say what they're willing to what their levels of interest in. And I'm thinking at the next meeting, that would be the first assembly of that, and we could, as people gravitate to one of these topics,
What can you, I need you to explain what you just said. The next meeting in a month being the first time the people in these groups get together?
Not necessarily, but that would be the time on the 24th of March. You have to decide how you can get people together between now and the 1 month from now, so they have something to report back on.
So people would report back at that time. At that
That's my vision,
okay.
but
I didn't understand that. That's what I was asking, whether that was their meeting or that's when people were reporting back. Okay.
Well, it depends on the success that you have between now and then, of course. So,
Right.
there's a lot of variables in there.
Well, Michelle, as I'm looking at some of these things and combining, and I see, I guess I still very strongly feel, and I don't know anybody else, that number one has to be a separate committee to do the looking, but 2 and 8 together makes sense. 3, 4, and 5 together makes
Right.
sense. And
Okay.
then maybe mental health and school and youth. So
Okay.
that's 4.
That's 4, good. I think, yeah, I was shooting for 3, but 4 certainly is great as well. Maybe you said you were going to put your phone number and email address in the chat,
Right.
so people can respond, and we can send them, our ideas, and then they could let us know what they're interested in.
Yeah, it also would be helpful if you're someone who's had experience sort of facilitating a meeting, not only from the technology point of view, but facilitating a group, running meetings and communicating. Put that in, because there's going to be needing to be some people who are facilitators.
So I also want to address, this has been a question that's been asked to me a couple of times, so I'll read Meg Barth's question. If we're not reconvening as a group until 3/24, how will our collective thoughts and suggestions affect the written plan that is due to the state on 4/1? Don't we have to develop a plan and then put it out for public review comment as part of our process? Yeah, I mean, there's the process as is articulated here, which, the town board will have to work collectively to try to pull something together. I've tried to run with this as best that I can, as an individual, mostly through COVID. So, it's been a big challenge, and even just getting these meetings together. So, but what I'm committed to, though, is, there's this unfunded mandate from the governor's office to check a box and complete a form. I see this much more organically as trying to get residents to work with our police, not just because there's a report due on April 1st, but something that continues. And so that's where I'm coming from. And I'll be working with the town board to meet the obligations as established by the governor's office. But I'm much more trying to motivate an ongoing dialogue and relationship, and really not just check the box, because we're a small community here in Tuxedo. Our report isn't going to be like a report from New York City or Albany or Rochester. This is me personally, and I'm more about trying to develop something that the people who came out for this are looking, because they really are concerned and do want to have a sustaining dialogue. Over.
Can I ask if people have questions about some of these different categories to think about as they think about which one they might want to join? I mean, you certainly can call me and ask me on the phone, but if there are people who have questions now to ask as you're thinking about it.
Well, also, while people are thinking of questions to ask, two people now have joined since we have introduced ourselves. So Ligon, Esposito, and Tyler. How about Ligon? We've been introducing ourselves to the group. Would you care to tell us a little bit about yourself? You can unmute yourself. Ligon? Okay, let me try Tyler. Tyler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Tyler Vecchio. I just thought I'd join the meeting and get a scope on what's going on and check it out.
Hey, thank you. Let me go back to Ligon. Ligon? Okay. All right. So Ken, I think that we can send by email the issues that Sue had developed, and that might be easier for people to take another look and think which group they want to be involved with. So if people send us their email, we'll send them that list. How's
So
that?
did you post your email, Sue, so people can
Yes,
connect?
I did.
Okay.
Didn't I? Did people see it?
Yeah, I
Could
see
you
it.
just- Okay. Could you say it out loud so people can see?
Sure. My email is sscher5@optonline.net, optonline.net. And my phone, it's a landline, is 845-351-2883. So if you want to call, and talk about where do I think I fit best kind of thing, we can talk about it. And I'll retype this so in the new combinations.
So I see we have 19 participants. Of the 19, any show of hands as to how many people might be sending email to Sue? And okay, wonderful. 2 hands coming. She just signed up somebody else. I'm not sure who. Either that is there's a crime being committed at her home, and we better send over the police.
And if you know people who were here last time, who aren't here today, if people could give them a call and say, hey, this is the next step we're going. Or if you know people who haven't been here to any of them, but would like to participate, we would like to hear from them.
So, I mean, if we could roust about 10, 12 or 15 people, I don't know, that probably spells about 3 different groups. You want to keep a group to about 5 people so everybody has a chance to participate. And again, there's the obligation to get a report done. I mean, I don't expect, let me be clear about this. I don't expect our report that goes to the state to be the be-all, end-all for Tuxedo Reinvention. We're going to update people what we've managed to get done to date. And, I'll hold the responsibility, and anybody who wants to help me with that, fine. I'm expecting especially people on the town board, to help me orchestrate any of these checkbox obligations. But I'm expecting the people who are coming after this meeting to really, what I consider, get the spirit of this going, an ongoing dialogue that really is going to affect community policing by getting the community to support the police and to work together to envision what is community policing in Tuxedo. And, and I do very much understand your point, Sue, about number one. You know, I'm not a person of color. I've never been afraid when I was pulled over by the police. You know, most of the time I was pulled over, I know why I was pulled over. I was going too fast and was always treated with respect. You know, my mother didn't. My mother always taught me about respect for police because, you know, many of my relatives are in first responders and police officers, but it wasn't from a position of fear. And so, you know, people who have those experiences, that's a definite, that's what a lot of this report was triggered by. And so that can't be overlooked. And um, so if that's your point, Sue, I couldn't agree more. You know, that those are some of the biggest impetus to why this stuff came about. And that doesn't mean it's as simple as that. That I think. So.
Right. And the other thing that to me would need to move quickly is a group working on a survey, because the survey's going to help us understand questions that we have to ask further. So if we don't know what bothers people, we can't research those and then come up with recommendations. So that has to be finished quickly, go out to people, and then come back and analyze at a fast
But
pace.
We can put
to
it on the
expert,
website, definitely. And I also can create a QR code, so we have, like, we can put it in, like, the, you know, like,
Oh, in reading, I was thinking of using Microsoft Forms, and one of the last things in the training it taught you how to do a QR code. Was-
yeah.
so
You know,
to expedite, you know, it's 8:21. So I think you've at least established anybody who's interested should be emailing you, like you said, Sue, right away. You
Right
don't
away.
have to have made a decision what group I'm going to join, but just acknowledge that you want to be a part of this. Okay, so hopefully those names are going to arrive in your inbox by tomorrow, if not sooner. Why not right now?
I know, I was
Almost
looking for,
everybody's at a computer right
I was
now.
looking for my iPad to see if anybody sent any messages.
Yeah, no, if people are serious, they should be sending you an email right now that says, Sue, add me to your list. So then what's Sue going to send you back? She's going to send you back these lists, and you're going to start pondering over the next 24 hours. This seems interesting to me. And Sue's going to see what do those responses look like? Is it diverse? Is everybody zeroing in on the same one? And somehow you guys are going to have to figure out, you know, well, how do we divide that up? Do we stick with 3 topics, you know, that are broad, or, you know, depending on what your interests are? And then the
Calvin.
real challenge is also considering, okay, I got 5 guys. How are we all going to agree on a day and a time that we're going to meet? And that's always a big challenge. So I applaud your efforts, first of all, to send your name in. Be flexible with the times that you can meet, or this will never happen. And then, Sue, you could tell me in a week, how does it play out? How many people signed up, and what does it look like? How does that sound, guys? Raise your hand if you think that might work. All right.
Also, maybe somebody is good with, you know, one of the Survey Monkeys or Doodle or whatever it is. If somebody wants to volunteer to put out a schedule for meetings, that's
Right. Well, yeah.
That would be great in your email if you could also tell what skills you might have for organization. You know, like I said, can you run a Zoom? Can you put together a Survey Monkey? Sue seems to have a survey already kind of developed that just needs to be formatted and circulated. So
No,
Survey Monkey is for scheduling, right?
no,
Oh,
Survey Monkey, you can actually
Doodle is
make
for
surveys.
scheduling. I looked
What
at
do I know?
SurveyMonkey, I looked at ProQuest, I looked at Google Forms, I looked at Microsoft Forms. So far, Microsoft Forms seems to be the clearest, easiest, most comprehensive.
yeah, that's
from
the
what
one I
we-
used when we did the website survey. We did it on that, and it's really nice because it gives you analytics already. So you have, like, graphs of who said what, so you know what are your more popular categories and et cetera. So, and it translates well to anybody when they open it up, they can see it clearly, where some of the other ones are harder to see.
And Maria, you got a lot of responses, didn't you?
Yep, 105, something like that, 106.
That'd be great.
So there's only, 15, 19 people on this. If everybody could try to get somebody else interested, show your concern. Tell them to stop yelling at the TV and actually show up and try to do something with people. Let's build bridges here. This isn't about, it's about fixing our community, not about fixing other people. We all have to reflect inside, and change starts right here. So I'm trying to wrap this up. It's 8:25. I'm hoping that Sue's email is lighting up right now, that I might have to call the fire department. Oh, you got 2 so far?
Two so far.
Come on. She's giving out a prize.
But
The next five
wanna see-
emails.
People want to see the combined list, so I will do that when we're finished and send it to whom to send it out to people. I don't have people's emails.
Well, that's why they're supposed to be sending it to you right now. Because how are you going to send them anything?
I'll send it to Michelle. No, but I mean to send it out to the whole group, or whoever sent the meeting announcement on your.
That was
Google,
me, but
your Google whatever.
okay. I want you to get more than 2 names, though.
Well,
Are we waiting until I get more? Is that the issue?
You didn't get started
I
right
think
away.
Officer Shiloh is not going to knock on their doors right now, and he's heading out to get you people, to get you to send an email. I texted him, and that's where he's going
2.
right now.
Okay, we're up to 3 now.
Sergeant Russell is calling the Orange County Sheriffs as we speak to wrangle you guys.
Hey, Ken, do you mind if I add something to something you said a few minutes ago?
Oh, God, I hope it's something good, I said. Please go ahead.
You mentioned about community policing and when you got pulled over.
Yep.
When I first started here in Tuxedo, Sergeant Russell was my field training officer, but I already had 5 years experience in another department. And since then, we've had a competition between him and I of who got the most handshakes during arrest or giving out a ticket. And both arrested people, and after the fact, after the processing, etc., they actually shook our hands out of respect. I've given out speeding tickets, and they actually shook our hands and out of respect. Both of us, we've shared stories. My point is, we communicated with the people. We treated them like people. And that was one of our tactics. And we still do it to this day. Maybe it's slowed down a little bit, I'll admit. But we used our words and we treated them like human beings. And they walked away, drove away with a ticket, or walked away after being arrested and actually thanked us. So that's how we police in this community. Not every community does that. Have we done that every time? No. But if we all just communicate with each other, whether it is these committees, these meetings, or one-on-one, everyone in this department's approachable. You see us on the street, on the road, or whatever, hey, I'm so-and-so, I have a question. And we'll answer it the best we can. I just wanted to add to that, that's all.
Can I ask one question related to that? Because some towns seem to be creating, I don't remember what they call it, a card that when they stop somebody, a card that has the name of the police officer and where to go this and have all kinds of information on it that just sort of, it's in a sense telling people their rights. Is that anything that we do?
Not that I know of. You mean like a business card or something?
Yeah,
Or...
yeah.
Well, we do have, each of us have our own business cards.
But do you
our
handle
email.
that out automatically to people each time you stop them so they know what your name is and who you are or whatever?
I think Sergeant Russell
her
wants
hand
to
up.
answer that.
I'll answer that. What you're relating to is a method that has come into play in larger police departments like Chicago and New York City. Those larger police departments that may have had issues when it came to car stops, the majority of their complaints
Mhm.
being car stops and how people were dealt with, those police agencies, be it their police commissions or their boards or what have you, got together and came up with different methods to provide individuals that were stopped with full information detailing who stopped them and why they stopped them. So if the individual wanted to complain, they would say, this person stopped me at this particular time. He gave me his card, if they had some form of complaint. In the town of Tuxedo, we don't hand out business cards out to someone that we've just stopped for some type of an infraction. We haven't experienced or been in a position where we've got complaints that we've been mishandling people or treating people incorrectly. Both myself and Shiloh, we're state certified field instructors. We teach all of the officers that come to this department to behave and react the same way. Now, not everyone's going to have the same experience that comes into contact with officers, but we push to make sure everyone is professional. They all know me, pretty much all of you that do know me, you know how I am. I insist on people being very professional. No matter what we're going to do, we're going to be professional. Even if I got to put you in cuffs for something you've done wrong, we're going to be professional about it at all times. That's how we move forward. That's how we work in the town of Tuxedo. So as far as that particular card that you're speaking about, Sue, that's not something that's been implemented in the town of Tuxedo by our chief or any previous chiefs due to the fact that we don't have those type of complaints.
Okay,
No.
Saugerties is talking about doing that, or at least it was
Well-
part of their recommendation.
Okay, I'm the time police. It's 8:31, and
Wait.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'll give you a second, but we are wrapping this up now. So I need you. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Maria.
I just want to tell a story. Actually, you don't even know, but my neighbor, Officer Shiloh, my neighbor, told me a great story about you. I guess she just had a baby. She is in Southfields. Her car died on Route 17. She lives right off of Route 17. And like there she was, and you came up and helped her. And instead of like leaving her on the side of the road and getting, like a tow truck or whatever, you guys stopped the traffic and just like pushed her car over to her driveway. And she was like, nobody's ever done anything like that for me. We have the nicest police officers. So there. And then she shared that story with me.
Thank
And Maria, you told me that story about all I have to do is call them, and they're going to help me shovel on a driveway. Is that true? Oh, wait a second. I don't want to start rumors.
Eyes.
Just kidding, obviously. So closing this out, I'm really hoping everybody sends Sue an email, and then try to make every effort to connect so that there's some momentum between now and our next meeting on March 24th. And we'll be sending out updates. I would expect you would see a survey coming your way, and updates as to, we'll send out these documents as to the different categories you might be interested in. Most of you probably have them already, but I'll resend them in the next day or two. And just try to connect through Sue, and I appreciate you coming out. And thank you to our officers, and especially to the chief. Chief, you did a great job organizing with me, so thank you so much. And amen. I'll see you in town hall at our town board meetings, and come see us.
Thank you. Stay healthy,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody. Donna, where's your children? I thought I saw one of them. Did you put to bed? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Stay healthy.
Good night.